Is now the time to sell low on Los Angeles Chargers running back Austin Ekeler? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can check her out on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also check out her fantastic work at Behind the Steel Curtain and Pro Football Focus. Kate, we've got some players that we're going to talk about today that had less than stellar performances in Week 13. It's our typical Panic Meter Monday. Let's start with Austin Ekeler. 14 carries for 18 yards. Did catch 2 passes for 9 yards in the passing game.
Ooh.
Are you ready to kind of sell low on Austin Ekeler?
I don't want to be overreactionary, but Marcus, yes, I kind of am. And this, like, just in general, right? Like the writing, I think, was kind of on the wall for this one. We look at Austin Ekeler, who is extremely talented. He's 28 years old. Has been an absolute gem, right? Like the literal definition of a diamond found in the rough out of nowhere. But again, Austin Ekeler, 28 years old, ranks 13th among active running backs in terms of total touches. I'm not saying this is like the pivotal moment of decline, but it kind of feels like this is a moment of decline for Austin Ekeler. You look at his overall efficiency as a runner. Averaging just 3.5 yards per carry, a career second lowest missed force tackle rate of his career, career low yards before contact per attempt. Like just in general, career low yards after contact per attempt. Like this has not been an efficient season for Austin Ekeler, and it's really difficult to overlook the fact that that season of tremendous inefficiency also coincides with his age 28 season. It coincides with, again, the fact that he ranks 13th among active running backs in total touches. Those aren't numbers that improve from here. Those are numbers that only get worse from here. And, Austin Ekeler, if you are not in a situation where you are in like an immediate need for running back, if you're out of the playoffs and can afford to move on, I do think this is the time. We're just not really seeing that same version of Austin Ekeler. He's, going to be gone after this year. And then
we should mention that
who knows what happens.
Yeah, free agent after this year, turns 29 years old. I don't envision the Chargers bringing him back. And if they do, it's probably on a 1-year deal. Kate, here's the most concerning thing for me. How many games do you think this year Austin Ekeler has averaged over 3.5 yards a carry?
I think it's just probably been a few.
Two.
Two.
Week one against Miami. And then he had one against Green Bay, 10 for 64, average 6.4 yards per carry. I'm going to read you the rest of the games. 1.9, 3.2, 1.9, 3.4, 3.5, 3.2, 1.3. I mean, it's gone. And when you watch that game against the Packers a few weeks ago, there was a play where he got to the outside and he should have scored on. He looks so incredibly slow. And maybe it's the injury that he suffered early in the year, but I just don't see it. This offensive line's not opening holes in the run game. I don't see the Chargers investing more money into him. It feels like it's probably over for Austin Ekeler. He'll still be in the league. He'll stay on as a passing down back, but the days of him being the featured running back on a team are long gone. And the days of him being like a top 5, top 10 running back on a week-to-week basis are absolutely gone.
And here's the thing, Marcus, you look at each of the last 2 seasons, wasn't necessarily a super overly efficient runner Like first 2 seasons in his career, averaged over 5 yards per carry. That hasn't been the case since. So, hasn't been, overly efficient, obviously getting a ton of work as a receiver, but where he's made his bread and butter, right? It has been the touchdown production. 20 touchdowns in the 2021 season, 18 last season. Now just 5 so far this year. You're not going to be mad about it, but you look at Austin Ekeler, this is actually the most rush attempts he's averaged per game in his career, 14 rush attempts per game. And this is the kind of production we're seeing. And I don't know, again, like that the offensive line is good enough to really maybe mask some of that lost efficiency here. And it feels like, again, Marcus, we've talked about the cliff for running backs in Dynasty so often here. There's kind of this tipping point where a player can lose value extremely, extremely quickly. And I'm worried about Austin Ekeler moving forward, especially knowing that he's a free agent after this season. And I'm not so sure the running back market is very, very favorable to really anybody, let alone a 29-year-old running back.
And we saw last year, the NFL just had a big philosophy switch on how to value running backs. Saquon Barkley, Tony Pollard, I mean, there was another running back, Josh Jacobs. They all got franchise tagged. Jacobs having a significantly worse season. Tony Pollard having a worse season. Saquon Barkley has actually been pretty decent. Miles Sanders got the biggest contract in free agency. He doesn't even play anymore. Chuba Hubbard plays ahead of him. I can almost guarantee you the NFL is going to look at how the running backs were handled this offseason and be like, no, we're just never going to pay these guys any money. I could see Austin Ekeler getting a somewhat decent 1-year deal to come in and be like a passing down back with a little bit of a, more traditional power back, Kate. But my concern is that even the receiving stuff is way down. Like, for example, over the last 3 games, 12 targets. Now, that's not a ton, but it's a decent amount. 47 yards on 12 targets, 0 touchdowns. Like, the efficiency in the passing game just isn't there either. He's not breaking tackles. If I'm a dynasty owner, I try to get out now before the value really, really sinks. There'll probably be somebody in your league that thinks that he could help, that Ekeler could help him down the stretch in a playoff run, but I would be worried that by 2024, the values are just going to completely fall through the floor.
Yeah, this is the lowest average receptions per game, 3.4 receptions per game for Austin Ekeler this season. That is the fewest since his sophomore season in the league when he was averaging 2.8. So again, even that receiving production, not quite as voluminous as I think you probably would have hoped, especially considering the fact that this is a team that, kind of needs help with in the passing game, right? You have Quentin Johnston, who's been Mr. Dropsies. You have Mike Williams, who they lost to a torn ACL. Like, I think game script wise, you would have thought that this team might lean into Austin Ekeler a bit more, but I just don't know that it's there. And that makes me really sad because I love Austin Ekeler. And
me too. It's just not happening.
But I'm nervous.
It very much feels like the Chargers are going to go in a different direction this offseason. They're going to change their head coach. Wouldn't be surprised if they change the offensive coordinator and kind of rebuild that offense. And I have a hard time believing that Austin Ekeler is going to be back. And I certainly don't believe that he's going to return to the form that we saw him in 2021 and 2022. Okay, let's move on to a young receiver in Atlanta that I was really high on going into the season. We will talk about him next. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We're getting near the holidays. I know everybody has different traditions when it comes to giving gifts. Personally, I like when I either give an experience, whether that's, going out and doing something fun, going to a brewery or going to a night away. Those are some of my favorite gifts that I either get or give. Whether or not your family gives gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give it to yourself. And the holidays are a great time to do that. So whether it's by starting therapy, going easier on yourself during the tough moments, or treating yourself to a day of complete rest, Oh man, how awesome are those days where you just get to do whatever you want. You get to just relax. It's absolutely amazing. Remember to give yourself some love this holiday season. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's done entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you could switch therapists at any time for any reason at no additional charge. In the season of giving, give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We wanted to let you know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, let's talk about my guy, Drake London, who had a rough outing against the Jets. 1 catch for 8 yards on 5 targets. I was really excited about London coming into the year. He went on an absolute tear at the end of the 2022 season. But this year, through 11 games, 46 catches, 573 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And frankly, Kate, he's just somebody that I don't think you can trust in your lineup at all moving forward.
Marcus, I think the biggest issue with Drake London now, from a skills perspective, let's talk about skills perspective. And I do think, Marcus, for what he's accomplished situationally, you've got to be really impressed, right? You look over the past 2 seasons, among wide receivers in the 2022 draft class with 50 or more targets over the past 2 seasons. Drake London leads them all in terms of PFF receiving grade. You have 1.92 yards per route run, 3.2 yards after the catch for reception. His overall efficiency metrics, outside of that yards after the catch, generally been, pretty solid. 12.2 yards per reception. He's got 92.2% of his catchable targets, which again leads that entire cohort. But you know what the problem is, Marcus? Not a lot of his targets are catchable. 128 of his 185 targets in that span have been considered catchable. That's just that's not a high enough rate. Even if he is efficient on the ones that he is catching,
So what's the phrase? You don't throw good money after bad money, right? Like basically,
Mm.
I don't know. I'm bad with phrases. You shouldn't just keep. If you don't have Drake London right now in your dynasty leagues, is he somebody that you go out and target, or do you just kind of wait and see how things play out? I'm such a sucker. I'm probably going after Drake London because I just don't believe that this quarterback situation is going to continue to be this bad moving forward. Either the Falcons are going to get rid of Arthur Smith, they're going to get a new quarterback. But Kate, we've seen the potential. He's only 22 years old. He doesn't turn 23 until next July. I'm probably willing to go out and buy him right now. I don't think I'm panicking too much.
Here's the thing, Marcus. I look, especially for dynasty purposes, I love to look at circumstances surrounding player performance. We've already looked at Drake London and what he's accomplished. I think he passes the eyeball test by a mile. From an analytics standpoint, he's done just about as well as you could possibly expect him to do under those circumstances. So my prediction is that this front office is going to look at the pool of talented players and say, all right, something has to give. We have too much talent in this team. I think, especially considering their defense has improved, they're going to look at the offense and be like, okay, like we've squeezed enough production out of this defensive roster. What in the world is going on in offense? And I think a big answer to that is going to be addressing the quarterback position this offseason. Maybe addressing the head coach, depending on
Please.
how things roll. Please do. But
Well,
I think no matter what, you have to expect that this is rock bottom.
Yes, I can't envision the passing game getting worse. You and I were just joking before the show. Like Desmond Ritter just threw his first ever road touchdown against the Jets on. It's wild. Like there's going to be quarterbacks available this offseason, whether it's Kirk Cousins. I don't think that one's super likely. Justin Fields, maybe. Like I would love to see Kyler Murray in Atlanta throwing to Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Now that he's not a perfect quarterback or whatever, but could we've seen like DeAndre Hopkins have a huge year with Kyler Murray. You give Kyler Drake London and Pitts in this running game, and I think this could be a really good offense. I'm probably buying now with the intention that this is a hold. Like I'm buying him not to start him at all moving forward. I'm buying him as a long-term asset because in the short term, there's no way that you can trust them going forward, especially now that are all of our bye weeks done now that we're going into week 14?
We still have, I think, a couple of bye weeks in week 14, if I'm not mistaken.
And this must be the last week of bye weeks then, right? Like you're going to
Arizona
have
Cardinals and Washington Commanders.
great.
Yes, and that is the final bye week.
You're going to have your full roster available to you. I'm not playing Drake London going forward because there's just no faith in this passing attack, but I do want him long-term because of the upside.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think this is a great buy low window. There again, like it's not even just Drake London, right? Drake London, I feel like is probably the lowest end of the frustration totem pole with assets here in the Atlanta
Yeah.
Falcons. So like he kind of feels like the forgotten child, right? I
Yes.
think this is a perfect moment to make that target.
Yeah. Go out and buy Drake London. I'm still willing to pay top 25 receiver price for Drake London. I want him on my team because I know the upside and the quarterback
Elite
situation.
talent.
Yeah, elite talent and the quarterback situation. The thing is, if it's average next year, Kate, we could be looking at a 1,200 yard, 12 touchdown receiver. If it's top 10, which I think is pretty unlikely, the ceiling is even much higher than that. So go out, buy Drake London, and reap the rewards next year. Let's talk about a running back from the same game who I am a little bit nervous about moving forward. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fastest and the easiest way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. All in prices show your total upfront so that you know you're getting a great deal without any of the hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Kate, let's talk about New York Jets running back Breece Hall, who is going through it right now. I'm going to read you his rushing yardage totals from like the last 2 months. 39, 17, 50, 28, 23, 25, and 16. Now, he has been involved as a receiver, but we saw a report from Ian Rappaport going into Sunday that they thought that Dalvin Cook was running better and they wanted Dalvin Cook to get more work in the offense. I'm officially concerned about Breece Hall with the Jets.
See, I think it's fair to have your concerns about Breece Hall for the remainder of 2023, right? This is not a good offense. This is not an offense that is going to be spending much time in the end zone. This is not going to be an offense that probably spends much time in the red zone. Like this is not going to be a high scoring, high production offense. Namely, you can blame it on the quarterback, what have you, but I'm far too invested in the talent of Breece Hall. I'm far too invested in the fact that I do think a lot of the circumstances surrounding some of that inefficiency is circumstantial, right? Offensive line for the Jets hasn't been healthy, hasn't been playing well. They've kind of had a mix of contributors there. That's certainly not going to help the case. But again, Dalvin Cook on a 1-year deal, that's a temporary circumstance. The quarterback position, temporary circumstance. We know we're going to expect Aaron Rodgers to return next year, which should spark this overall offense. Hopefully that offensive line should be healthier next season. And again, Marcus, I just go back to the talent, period. Breece Hall, far too talented a prospect. He's got far too much upside. He's got speed. He's got juice. He's got absolutely everything you want in a running back prospect. He's got size. He's got hands. Like everything that I think has me hesitating about Breece Hall in terms of like throwing him into my lineup on a week-to-week basis. All of those are temporary things. So I think, if you have somebody in your league that is hesitant like you,
Yep.
I would love to take him off your hands because
Well,
again, like look at the circumstances.
Breece Hall in our last batch of ADP was going as RB3. And I think that's what makes me more nervous than anything is like, if you've got to pay that price for Breece Hall, I don't love it for a couple of reasons. Number one, the offensive line is not good. I don't see this getting dramatically better. Also, if you go through the timeline of the last 12 months for Breece Hall, it's a little scary. I'll run through just some of it, right? He has this knee injury that's pretty severe, comes back, it's whatever. We know that the Jets wanted to take Jahmyr Gibbs with their first round pick. Like they wanted to add another first round running back to do a lot of the passing down work. They didn't get Gibbs, so they went out and they signed Dalvin Cook to a pretty decent deal for a running back. And that obviously, Dalvin Cook looks washed, but now they're talking about wanting to get him more involved in the offense. We're already halfway through his rookie deal. I think I would just rather, if I could trade Breece Hall for Jahmyr Gibbs straight up, I think I would do it at this point. Honestly, I have more faith in the Lions situation, in Gibbs' situation, than I do trying to wonder what this Jets coaching staff thinks of Breece Hall and how they're going to use him week to week.
I think that's probably a trade I would also do. But again, I think it's probably a trade that most people would do. So you might have some trouble getting the Gibbs manager on board with that one. But I could very much envision Breece Hall's ADP falling a bit after the last month, considering all those circumstances that you mentioned. I can't understand anything that I've seen on the field that would give this coaching staff any sort of hesitancy about him being the guy long term. And maybe that's just me sticking to my guns in terms of my evaluation of Breece Hall. But I think it's too early to tell necessarily. Like, I think a lot of what they wanted to do, especially before the season, have an insurance policy because they thought this was going to be their championship run, right? I think the Jets were very convinced that they were going to be all in on a Super Bowl this year had it not been for the Aaron Rodgers injury. You look at the timing for the draft, Breece Hall very much in uncertainty at that point. And what he was actually going to look like, what the rest of his rehab would look like. It turns out it was fine. But I think a lot of this was kind of them trying to front load things and they did a good job of it. They did their best effort for it, but didn't quite work out in the way that they thought it would. I just think it's less of an indictment on Breece Hall than it is circumstance.
So
but
you would rather have Breece Hall than Jahmyr Gibbs?
No, I'll take Gibbs in that circumstance.
Would you rather have Kenneth Walker or Breece Hall?
Breece Hall.
I'm leaning towards Kenneth Walker. What about our guy Devin Achane?
Breece Hall.
That one's trickier for me. I probably would lean Devin though. I'm really nervous about this situation because I just don't trust this Jets team at all to know how to use their best players. I don't trust Aaron Rodgers at 40 years old that he's suddenly going to stay healthy for 17 games and that we're not going to be back to the same situation that we are this year. I'm spooked. I guess that's the best way. My panic meter is like an 8 right now for Breece Hall. I'm nervous. But we want to know how nervous you guys are about Breece Hall and Drake London and Austin Ekeler. So please reach out to us at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We are free and available on all platforms. Go check out our show on YouTube, Locked On Dynasty. Everydayers, Matt and Ryan will be back on Tuesday and Wednesday. Kate, you and I back on Thursday. And then on Friday, we are going to break down Iowa, Michigan. Oh, sorry. Pittsburgh, New England on Thursday Night Football. Should be an absolute blast. Cannot wait. Make sure you guys check that out. Again, follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your Monday. Enjoy the rest of the week. And we will see you right back here tomorrow.